Elder Barawak, Elder Yashia. Truth will set you free. Salvation and faith. Nazarene Hebrew Institute of Technology.
All right. Shalom, shalom to Facebook. Shalom, shalom to YouTube. We have a very, very special guest today. Definitely want to know that we are so excited for Nazarene Hebrew Institute of Technology to have Dr. Elazar DaMota. Dr. DaMota was born in Miami, and he comes from a long line of Sephardic families from Spain and Portugal and North Africa, which established themselves in the Caribbean before migrating into the United States. The rabbi is a Hakham. If I'm not mistaken, Hakham is a person that's skillful and very well studied in their studies. The rabbi is from the Dominican Republic or resides in the Dominican Republic. His studies, he has a master's degree in religious studies and anthropology from Florida International University. And he also has a PhD in international law from the University of Amsterdam.
Wow.
DaMota is author of numerous books and articles on Western Sephardic Jewry in English, Hebrew, Portuguese, and Spanish. Like I said, it's a great honor to have him here. Very, very viewed as a scholar in my eyes, as a biblical scholar and an authority of well-studied information that he brought out. So welcome, Rabbi DaMota.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor and pleasure for me to be here on your platform.
Thank you. So we're going to start off. We have some questions that we had went over And Jeff, definitely, hopefully we have time after, within the window, we can ask you a few more. So we're going to start off with the first question was the particular Igbo that's the topic and the subject of who you were interviewing. I seen you did a magnificent interview out there in Africa. And my first question would be the Igbo tribe that you were interviewing over in Africa, did they speak Hebrew?
Very good question. So I went last year during the month of June and July to 2023. I spent an entire month traveling throughout various cities in Nigeria and visiting the different Igbo Jewish communities and those that are in Igbo land as well. I started out in Abuja, then I went to Lagos, and after Lagos, I went to Igbo land, specifically in Imo State, the city of Owerri. And when I arrived to Abuja, I became acquainted with one of the communities on the first Shabbat that I was there, and I was surprised because when I walked into the synagogue and I heard the prayers, it was like as if I walked into any synagogue I've been to around the whole world. They were praying, the Hazan, the leader, was praying in perfect Hebrew, and the entire service was pretty much the same structure as any synagogue around the world. What I enjoyed a lot about that particular service was how they blend their traditional language, Igbo language, together with the Jewish service that you will find anywhere. And it actually brought tears to my eyes to be able to experience the Igbo language and the singing and the dancing right after the returning of the Torah to the Echad. And tears just came down because I never enjoyed or had experienced such bliss and joyfulness in a Torah service as such. And I've been to many Jewish communities around the world, but I've never experienced something so soulful, I would say, soulful and spiritual as the experience with the Igbos there in Abuja. Then we visited another community in Abuja as well, and in the city of Gihon. There as well, we had a prayer service in the afternoon on a weekday, and the prayer leader prayed in Hebrew. He did all services in Hebrew. Then I went on the next week to Lagos, which is one of the main cities, and the service again was all in Hebrew, and some Igbo language was also utilized in the service. I gave a lecture. I gave a long lecture or two lectures, I would say, that day, that Shabbat day, and then the next day on Sunday, I performed interviews as well. In all the places I went to, there was a combination between Igbo language and Hebrew and English. So I would say those three languages. And then I went on to Owerri, which is an Igbo land in the Imo State, and same thing. It was soulful. They even played instruments, not on the Shabbat, but on the weekdays. They played instruments in the service, and they utilized the three languages, English, Igbo, and Hebrew, in their services. It was amazing to see that. And, I will have to give a shout out to Deborah in Abuja. She's a self-taught Hebrew speaker who's a teacher. She's a teacher of various Hazanim or cantors, and in Abuja she has trained over 10 cantors on how to lead the prayer services in perfect Hebrew. So I have to really recognize that because she's a young girl. She's no more than 25 years old, and she has trained all of these cantors in the prayer services.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing, Rabbi. And my next question would be, how many languages do you speak, Rabbi?
People always ask me the question. Well, my mother tongue is Spanish. That's the language I heard first growing up. My parents, like you said earlier, my parents came from Dominican Republic, and they went to Puerto Rico. From Puerto Rico, they went to Miami. So we spoke Spanish at home, Spanish and English, bilingual. But for my parents, I spoke Spanish, and so I speak about 7 languages. I've lived in over 8 countries in the last 22 years, and I've been endowed with the gift of tongues.
Now, side note to that question: when you was translating with them, what language was he speaking? The elder there.
He was speaking Igbo language.
Speaking Igbo, and you understood Igbo language?
I understand some Igbo language. I'm not fluent in the language yet,
Right.
but I do understand a lot.
Yeah, we could tell in the interview, man.
Wow.
So, and I didn't have this written down, but I'm just curious to know: is it similar to Hebrew?
There are a lot of cognates that are related to the Hebrew language, and that's a topic for another discussion.
Right. Okay, all right. So that's good to hear that, though. That's very interesting. Okay, and I know that during your studies, with the criteria help you come to conclusion in the letter, the Obadiah letter, that Igbos were descendants of Hebrew Israelites. So what came to the conclusion that you came up with the conclusion during the Jewish courts? We have the letter. We read the whole letter. What came to the conclusion, your conclusion for that?
Okay, so one of the things that I always explain to anyone whenever I'm asked this question in interviews or personally is I explain the concept in Jewish law, which is called hazakah. Hazakah can be translated roughly as legal presumption. So in law, we can determine something when there's solid evidence, and also we can determine based on circumstantial evidences or based on a number of frequency. So if you see, we use this in science. In science, whenever you can prove that something is, a hypothesis is true, you need to perform 3 experiments. When the experiment produces the same result 3 times, then you can say, or you can presume that the hypothesis is true. Now, that doesn't mean that it is solid evidence, because if you have a larger frequency, you might not produce the result 100% of the time. So the way Jewish law works is based on legal presumption when it comes to identity. And one of the questions that I asked one of my mentors and teachers many years ago is, how can we prove that the Jewish people, we are actually Jews and we say who we are? And he said to me, his response was simple: hazakah, hazakah. Because no Jew today can trace all the way back to Mount Sinai with a perfect lineage or perfect genealogy. Not even those who descend from Kohanim, from the priests, who presume that they are descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses, peace upon them. We cannot bring a solid 100% proof. So Jewishness today, or Israelite identity, is based on hazakah. What that means is, when we look at various Jewish migrations around the world, or we look at communities that have a large frequency or connection to the Israelite people or traditions, or so on and so forth, we can study their anthropology. We can do what's called, in anthropology, we have a particular study which is called ethnography and ethnology. So ethnography deals with studying the culture and writing about it and inserting yourself into the culture. And then ethnology is where you observe the culture and then you interpret the meaning of what it means in comparison to another culture, or what it may mean to the observer. So that's ethnology. And Jewish law functions with these methodologies when it comes to establishing hazakah, or identity based on hazakah. So we have a passage in the Talmud that says, Kol Israel yesh lahem hazakah leithaten ze bazeh. All Israelites are fit and have the legal presumption that they are fit a priori, beforehand, to marry amongst themselves. So we don't raise a doubt whether someone is or is not. However, the law then says, if you see or you observe a particular family creating strife among the nation or speaking bad about others, then we have to investigate those lineages and those families, because perhaps they are descendants of the Gibeonites. And we know in the Bible who were the Gibeonites. They were descendants of the Canaanites who deceived the prophet Joshua. And then he made an oath with them, and they were part of the people of Israel, but separate. And so, with that said, once we understand the concept of hazakah, we're not going into a group such as the Igbos or any other group that says that they're Israelites to go and prove that they are. We're going to observe what they do, listen to their stories, and record. We do the ethnology or the ethnography, and then the ethnology. And then after we do that in anthropological research, we can then establish Jewish law, or we can apply the Jewish legal principles. This is how it works. And all rabbis who've been trained in Jewish law do it this way, and have done it with various other communities around the world. So to answer that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, what are some of the things that we observe among the Igbos? And there are a lot of things. I wrote down some things because I don't want to take up the whole time. I can take up a whole lecture just talking about
Right, absolutely.
But I will speak about some of the things that really stuck out to me, that really stand out, and which can help me determine that the Igbos descend from Israelites that lived or existed at the time before the destruction of the Second Temple. So we're talking about before the rebuilding of the Second Temple, before Ezra, Nehemiah, and those prophets, peace upon them. The Israelites who left from Israel and went to Africa, that group possibly left by the time of prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah at his time said there was a group of Israelites who wanted to go to Egypt. And he said, don't go there. Go to Babylon. Reestablish yourself there, have children, and work there and serve the Babylonians. And after, you will come back to this land. Now, this group, that large group of Israelites that went to Africa, they then migrated to other parts of the African continent for the ensuing centuries. And there's a lot of literature about those different migrations of Israelites scattered throughout the African continent. And so some of the customs that are really important among the Igbos is how they treat the land. So the tradition, the Igbo tradition or religious or cultural tradition is called omenana or omenala, which means what you do in the land. And this is very important because if we compare the Jewish community who has been in exile for a long time and moving from place to place, every time Jews move from one place to another place, we lose part of our traditions. And so the Igbos, they have been able to preserve the traditions that are related to the land, the ritual practices related to the land. So what I mean by that is the laws of inheritance, tribal inheritance, the laws of double portions given to the firstborn son, the laws referring to what we have in Hebrew, tum'ah, and to'eba, or purity, impurity in the land, and also what's translated as abominations. These two concepts exist in the Hebrew tradition, which don't necessarily exist even in Jewish communities as related to the land, but more so related into ritual practices, which were reworked by the rabbis in the Talmud to refer to the biblical time period. So the Igbos have a concept called unso. Unso is when someone becomes ceremonially impure or unclean involuntarily. For example, when a woman suffers or goes through menstruation, she's unso. This is considered unso. And so it's not her fault. It's something that happens biologically. So this concept of unso is in Hebrew tum'ah. She does not have access to the temple or the holy place. And then we have another term, aro. Aro can be translated as abomination. And this is a very important term because aro is related to those acts or practices which are abominable and impurify the land. The status of the land becomes unclean or inaccessible because of a particular practice. And there are a number of practices, and we can find them in the Torah. In the Leviticus, we have various practices.
For the land, I just want to just add something in to that because I'm listening to the land. Do they keep a Shabbat for the land as well? The 7-year Shabbat is in Torah?
Yes, they have the concept of the Jubilee and also Shemitah, which is sabbatical year. And so everything that the Igbos do is related to the land. And the land is very important because all the practices and the identity is directly related to the land. And this is, if you go to the Bible, you will see these same exact notions at the time of Moses and afterwards. So another concept that's very important here is that the Igbo tradition, indigenous tradition, they don't have Torah, the notion of a Torah scroll. Because the notion of the Torah scroll, as it is done in all Jewish communities today, is something that was established at the time of Ezra and possibly a little bit after. So that means that those Israelites that separated from that group before, they would not have that ritual of reading the Torah with a scroll every Shabbat. So this is for me one of the let's say indicators that this community established itself from a time much before or around the time of Ezra. Another very important tradition, which some scholars or some scholars or naysayers will say, oh, that's not exclusive to Hebrew Israelites or Jews, is Igbo circumcise their children, their boys, on the 8th day. And that's significant because circumcision is practiced throughout the African continent, but there's not necessarily a specific day when to do it. But among the Igbos, it is on the 8th day specifically. And if you're talking about a people that do not have a Bible, they don't have a Bible, it's an oral tradition. That means that this oral tradition has been passed down for a long time. And a boy that is not circumcised in an Igbo family, that's considered aru. That's abomination. And an uncircumcised boy will not even be taken out in public naked because the parents don't want anyone to see their boy uncircumcised. So these are some of the concepts that can connect the Igbo to a biblical time period in Israelites. Now I will add something to this. I believe that among the Igbo community, there have been different migrations of Jews for example, in 1492, the Jews of Spain were expelled, and a large group went to Morocco. And then a few years later, one of the sultans in Morocco forcibly converted those Jews to become Muslims. Now, some history says that some of those Jews left to other places, and others say that some became Muslims. But no one is talking about what happened to those who left and where did they go to. It is possible that some of those went southward into Mali. There was a large Jewish community in Mali, Timbuktu, and from there they kept traveling down south and connected with the Israelites that were in the Niger River Basin, what we call today Igbo land. And the reason why I say this is because among the Igbos, there are different shades of color, of skin complexion. There are some Igbos that will be considered white according to American USA standards, and others that are considered to be black. So we know that there hasn't been a systematic genetic test that can prove this, but I think that the genetics will show that they have a large number of Spanish and Portuguese Jewish genes among them. So that's a hypothesis.
Gotcha. My next question would be, in your opinion, what percentage on the slave ships during the transatlantic slave ships were Igbo?
Oh,
your percentage.
That's a very good question. I'm not an expert on this particular history, but I would say when I interviewed some of the Igbos about the slave trade, the one particular person from the Aro clan, so I explained a little bit what the term Aro means. The Aro clan, they are held responsible for purifying the land from all those things considered to be Aro. And this Aro man, as they are called, he explained the history of his ancestors and how they were involved in slavery and slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. And he explained how the process happened. And according to his calculations and his account of the transatlantic slave trade, I would say it's very difficult to give a number, but I can say in my studies on West African Jews and also Portuguese Jews involved in slavery and slave trade in the west coast of Africa, I would say that from all the slaves that came through West Africa and then went westward into the Caribbean islands and also to the let's say the Americas in total, I would say we can perhaps even say up to 50%. I like to be more conservative with numbers. I've heard numbers somewhere 90% or 80%, but I would say 50%, and that's significant already.
Yes, it is. Yashia, the next set of questions.
I just wanted to ask something about what he just said. Is that, I want to make sure I heard this right. The number you just gave, is that just the brothers coming through Portugal to Western Africa?
No, this number is referring to those Igbos who were enslaved and then they were sent.
The Igbos total. Okay.
The Igbos, yes. I have to explain something about that. So in the Igbo tradition, or in the biblical tradition, we have a concept that's called karet, being cut off from the community. So there are certain things that if according to biblical law and also Igbo tradition, omenana, if you do these things, you'll be cut off from the community. So the question here is, what happened to those people who were cut off from the Igbo community at the time of the transatlantic slave trade? Most of those people, they ended up being slaves. They were sent away. That's what happened. Wow. So what we're talking about is we have descendants of those cut off community members who are now in the Americas.
Whoa, getting the first.
Yes, they were cut off from the Igbo community, and then they were taken in some cases by Portuguese Jews who were involved in the slave trade, and then sent westward. So essentially, we have Israelite brothers who are working in this industry, sending away their wayward or rebellious brothers.
Awesome.
That was deep right there. We've been waiting to get confirmation on that. And so I got a few questions, and maybe we can get back to some of the other ones as well, but I'm going to ask this one first. Are there any books that would add any historical context to the Jewish acknowledgement that the Igbo are in fact ancient Israelites?
Okay, so in terms of Jewish acknowledgement, there's not, to my knowledge, there are no books written by rabbis or from the Jewish community per se, but there are a lot of books written by Igbo scholars themselves, right, or other scholars from non-Igbo scholars who have investigated and have done research in Igbo land, such as Remi Elona, Daniel Lees, Odi Magalu, Ogochukwu, Ndubuisi, and many others.
Do you mind, Rabbi, sending me those names so I can, because it's too hard for me to write them down. Okay. Send me those names so we can get those books. Yeah. We have Remy on. We know Remy. We have Remy on. We have Remy on before we have his books as well. But excellent. Yeah, the rest of them, I would love to you send me the email of those names so we can purchase the books. Go ahead, though, Rabbi.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Everybody relax. I'm never in awe. I'm just in awe. Y'all know that I can talk forever, but I'm like real humble. This is wow. We got the real dealers on here today. Let me ask you another question, Rabbi. Do you have any knowledge as to what specific tribes of Israel are known to be amongst the Igbo people?
Very good question. So yes, according to Omenana tradition or Omenala tradition, depending on the dialect of Igbo language, some people say Omenana, others say Omenala, referring to what you do in the land. The tradition says that Igbos, the majority. One of their descendants from Gad, the son of Gad, named Eri, came into Igbo land and established himself there. So that's one of the tribes. Another of the tribes is Yehuda, and we can determine this by the names that exist in some of the lineages that go back to Yehuda, or the meaning thereof. Also, Levites. There are specific clans among the Igbos that have the same exact ritual function or social function as the Levites, and also Kohanim. So we're talking about the Aru and also about the Enri, Nri. So these two clans will be like the Levites and the Kohanim among the Igbos. So we have Gad, Lewi, and Yehuda. This is what I think is among them. Now, if we go to the biblical time period and we look at where the tribe of Gad was on the other side of the river, of the Jordan River. And they were there with the Reubenites and the Manassites from Menashe, the half tribe. The other half was on the other side of the river. So we can assume that these clans or these tribes moved together, and among the Israelites, the Kohanim and Levites were divided among the 12 tribes. So if we can find Levites and Kohanim among the Igbos, it's safe to say, or we can make an educated guess or inference and say that maybe perhaps Menashe and Reuben were also part of that migration.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I agree with that totally, that assessment. I'm just taking notes as you speak. This is like a lecture to me, so I got another question. Wow. When we're getting confirmation on a lot of things, we had questions on. Very well, you never saw me like this before, have you? I'm enjoying this. Okay. Are you aware of any Hebrew manuscripts or artifacts that were able to survive the Igbo migration and wars once they arrived in Western Africa?
Okay, very good question. In terms of Hebrew writing, I have not found any Hebrew writing. There are some old script or writings in Anambra State, which is where it said that God and his descendants established themselves, and Oweri as well. There's some writing, and there's debate on whether what language this is, because people cannot really understand what it is. So in terms of writing, we don't have that. But in terms of artifacts, some members of the Aro clan spoke to me about what's called the Ofo. The Ofo refers to staff, a staff of authority. Now, I will explain the legend among the Igbos, what the Ofo is. And this is very important. In the Bible, we have a conflict between Moses and his cousin, Korah. And Moses told Korah and his group of people, come tomorrow and bring your staffs. Whoever staff buds, this is the person who, or this is the tribe that has been chosen by the Almighty to serve as the temple priests and representatives. Now, according to Igbo legend, each they carried these ofo, these staffs, with them into the African continent, and they are kept somewhere in a very safe place, and this is part of their tradition. So I didn't see it myself, but I heard the stories, and I saw in some of meetings that I've had with Igbos, some of them had a staff. Now I realized the staff that they use is a representation of the original staffs that would have been used that each tribe made at the time of Moses. So not everyone has or uses this type of staff when Igbos have their meetings, but this staff means authority. And so this is something that is significant, I would say, that is connected or will connect them to the biblical Israelites.
Wow. More proof.
Wow, yeah, absolutely.
I hope everybody in the audience is taking their notes, and just because I'm still in awe of what I'm hearing. Wow.
And Rabbi, now we ran through those questions, Rabbi. Now he has a few more. I don't know if we could add them in. Would be, if you can answer them, you can answer them. If you can't, there's no big deal. We respect, and even if you're giving us your opinion other than facts, that's okay too, because we don't want to force you into saying, oh, this is the authority, this is what it is. You know what I mean? So we're just trying to build information of what you may have taken, what you got, because you were over there hands on. So yeah, see how you can ask those loose questions there and see if Rabbi can answer.
Well, I'm going to try to get to things that can probably be simplistic. Okay, so when we speaking of the greater Igbo people as ancient Israelites, is this saying that all the clans of the Igbo tribe are ancient Israelites, or is it making specific clans inside of the greater Igbo people Israelites?
It's a very good question. The reason why I would say it's a great question is because there are some people among Igbos who say that they have no connection to Israel. Now, I would say all of the Igbos that I've met acknowledge that they are Israelites. All. I have not met one Igbo to say the contrary. Now, but I have heard and I've seen some people online who claim to be Igbo, but I don't know them. They might not even be Igbo. They might be, I don't know, from some other Nigerian ethno group who are claiming to be able to disprove or disclaim, knock down, debunk what we're trying to say. But I have not met one Igbo. I have not met one to say otherwise. And that's very telling.
Wow.
Now, I would say again, the fact that all Igbos say that they are Israelite doesn't mean that this is 100% evidence or truth. But if we apply the law of Hazakah in Jewish law, this is by frequency, then we can say that there is a claim to be made that can be substantiated because of the frequency. Now, if it was just by mouth, then we would say that's okay. That's an interesting thing. But when you go to the land and you see what people are doing, their agricultural practices, their marriage customs, circumcision, and everything else that I have not even spoken about here in detail, then we have to say, hold on, something's fishy here. Either these people copied Jews who were traveling among them and made something up or added their own tradition to it, or perhaps they are who they say they are.
All right, I gotta not adding anything to what you just said. I'm just trying to be clear on this because some of that was scary. So I just understood what you said is that there are people who are so bent on disproving that we are Israelites, or some of our people, or people that may look like us are Israelites, that they would attempt to enjoin themselves to specific groups that are openly claiming to be Israelites. But these people that are trying to enjoin themselves are not Israelites, and they just want to denounce that the greater group is Israelites. They don't know we add some. Wow,
that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, that's amazing, man.
So we call them over here deceivers.
Deceivers. I will have to add something here that's very important.
Please.
Among the Igbos, there's a tradition of the Osu. Osu are compared to what the Torah calls the Netinim, which are like the temple workers who are not part of the nation, but they are separate. And so the Igbos have this practice among them, the Osu people, and no Igbo will marry among the Osu. So they're part of the Igbo, they're within Igbo land, but they're not like part of the nation. So that's something very significant as well.
Yeah,
so perhaps those people are the deceivers or the naysayers. Say, we don't have anything to do with that. Perhaps, but that will require a larger study and an in-depth study on that particular group.
I
got more questions. I don't know if Barry White want to ask something before I go back, and then we see if.
No, go ahead. Get the questions.
Somebody just text me a question to ask you. Mm-hmm. And it's good because we got you on here. About maybe 15 years, was it 15, 20 years ago, we had received, like 15, via a video from a Karaite Jew that he was making with a gentleman by the name of Michael Root. They were over in the land of Israel.
Okay.
This Karaite Jew's name is Nehemiah Gordon.
Mhm.
He made some allegations in the video that there are thousands of New Testament Hebrew manuscripts that are in possession, people that are over in Israel are in possession of, I guess, the overseers of the manuscripts and things of that nature. Do you know anything about this? Are you aware of anything like this? Any New Testament manuscripts?
I'm not aware of it because this is outside of my expertise.
Okay.
I've heard that there are some manuscripts. Um, what is it called? There's one called the George Howard manuscript, another one called the French Dutilid manuscript. But I've never seen these manuscripts myself. And these are manuscripts, I think, related to the Gospel of Matthew.
Oh, wow.
That's what I have heard, but I have never seen them myself, never examined them. And like I said, that's outside of my expertise, so I cannot say so much about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because now I'm going to get back to my line of questioning. You answered that exactly, specifically. But before I get back, Barry Watt, is there any way we can contact the? I know you're really busy. We don't want to bother you with all our, but that is we would like to get the names of those we have so we can look into it, see if we can research it, those manuscripts.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite something right there. Okay, let me get back to this questions now. All right. And so all right, good. Is there any testimony that you are aware of amongst non-Igbo people that would substantiate the Igbo claims of their ancient migrations from Israel during several points in history, like you stated earlier?
That's a very good question, and I have not come across any such groups, but I can say in anthropology or comparative anthropology, you can see that the Yoruba, for example, who are also in Nigeria, they are a large ethno-religious group, mainly in Lagos. You know, in Nigeria, each one of the cities, they have a major ethno-religious group, and so the Igbos are always the second group in all the cities, no matter where they are, even outside of Igbo land. But each one of those cities has a large major group, like in Abuja, it's Hausa Fulani, and they're Muslims. You go to Lagos, and it's the Yoruba. And then the second group are Igbos. So the Yoruba, if we analyze their traditions and their taboos and their legends and many of the things that they do, and what we see in the diaspora of the Yoruba as it is practiced among the people who practice voodoo and those who practice Santeria, Candomblé, in the African, what's known as the African diasporic religions, most of these traditions are coming from the Yoruba. If we analyze those traditions and their legends and lores, we could try to connect them with the biblical Egyptians because those practices are very similar. This is something very interesting. What is considered taboo we look at the Torah, everything that the Torah establishes as being an abomination or being unclean or so on and so forth is the antithesis of Egyptian culture. So it's utilizing the same element, but contradicting it. And so I'll give you a very good example. So the animal offerings in the Torah, these offerings are utilized among Near Eastern peoples, the same exact rituals. But what the Torah is doing is, if the Hittites, let's say, for example, if they offered a lamb of the first year for a particular ritual, the Torah will say, offer on the third year, or offer a 3-year-old lamb.
Right.
If the Hittites are using a male lamb, then the Torah will say use a female lamb for that particular ritual. So it's utilizing the same element, but changing it in order to contradict. So if we look at some of the customs that the Yoruba have, they're the opposite of what the Igbos are doing. And these two peoples are right next to each other in the same country that's called Nigeria. That I find it interesting because I found some anthropologists who said that the Yoruba were actually, they came from the east and they crossed to the west.
Wow.
Inside of Africa. So if they if they came from the east and now they came to the west, that means that also Israelites who were there, they're also to the west side.
Right.
They are settling together in the same region, the new region now, but they're not marrying each other because they're completely different. They're the opposite.
That's interesting.
So it sounds like
I will add something to this. The genetic studies of some or some Igbos who have presented their DNA publicly, we can see in their autosomal DNA, which shows us the genetic makeup and migrations. They all all the Igbos that I've seen, their DNA, they all touch the Middle East, what today we know as Israel, Palestine, or the Levant area, and then East Africa, and then West Africa. They all have, and North Africa, some have. So that it shows that there's a migration from the Middle East into West Africa. And that, to me, that's very significant.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right, so we got another question, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to appreciate your answer on this. I mean, I'm sure from everything I studied, but you, of course, know more than I do about this area and history. Is there any history of a rotating weekly Sabbath?
Oh.
Have you ever read or in our history, in the history of our people?
So I'll ask you a question about this. Can you define what a rotating Sabbath is specifically? Because I've heard of different
okay, I'm going to defend it. So in the studies that we've done, and we've been studying a while, I mean decades, we've never obtained anything except the weekly Sabbath starting in America, sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. Now they have a teaching that I can't find in any writing that we have access to in America, where it says that when the new moon comes, now the Sabbath now rotates to accommodate the new moon. It's no longer Friday to Saturday sunset.
So it could be on a Wednesday, a Tuesday, or whatever. We don't subscribe to that, but we just wanted to see if you ever heard of that.
I have heard of that, and I actually heard about it among Spanish speakers. They call it Shabbat Lunar, so lunar Sabbath, among some groups. Some groups that I've heard that from in the state of Florida, Spanish speakers. Now, among the Igbos, what they have is what are called the 4 market days. And these 4 market days, I've been told, correlate to, I see on your shirt, you have there the holy name written.
Right. Yes.
So, the holy name written, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, in the ancient, that's the Hebrew script.
Fringes too.
Yeah. So this name is codified in the 4 market days among the Igbos. So those 4 market days, what it means is the following. You have 4 days that you work, everybody's working, and then you have a rest. And then you have 4 more market days, and then you have a rest. So what's happening is within a period of a whole month, you have these weeks of 4 days. And so if you compare 28 days, a 28-day cycle, at least 1 or maybe 2 will correspond to the 7-day Sabbath that's being followed by the rest of Jews around the world. So I think that's very interesting that the Igbos have this concept. And because of what it means to preserve that holy name by 4 market days. And nobody will work on that rest day. There's no business at all.
It shouldn't be. We agree.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, let's see if I got anything else. Give me 1 second.
Mhm.
Oh, this is one I have to ask too. Yeah, good. So, you obviously you've been over there. You've been a great deal of places where Israelites are scattered all over the place, and so this may have came up. You may have knowledge. If you don't, okay, it's good. Try to get this question answered. Are you aware of any history where the Igbos have joined themselves to other tribes over in different parts of the world that are Israelites, and they have taken them in, or they fellowship, or even perhaps even married? Because my knowledge from all of the studies and the books that we read and things it's other groups in Africa that claim to be Israelites, like the Falasha and the Limba and other groups. Those are just two of the most known groups. So do they fellowship with one another? Do they interact? Are those relationships strained?
So I don't know. I don't know if there are direct contacts between the Igbos and other Jewish groups or Israelite groups in Africa, but I will say that there are among Jews, Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews, outside of the African continent that do connect. When I was there, I became aware that there were since 1985, the one rabbi from Ghana, he was the first to travel into Nigeria and connect with the Igbos, and he brought them books and other articles. And so that's somewhere else from Africa. That's from, I think, was it Ghana or from Cameroon? Not Ghana.
Wow.
It was from Cameroon. And so that was the beginning of that. And then other Jewish groups from United States, from Europe, they went into Igbo land, also from Israel more recently. There was also in the 60s during the Biafra War, there were some Israeli soldiers that went to Nigeria to help the Igbos to fight for their independence.
Oh, wow.
I think that's very significant as well.
So do I. Wow,
Yes.
I never read. Wow.
Yes. And so more recently, there have been groups of Israelis who have gone to visit the Igbos in Nigeria. And if in the UK, we can see that there are some cases even where Igbos are married to Jews. And so this is something that's happening, and also in Israel as well. This is so that there are connections with other Jewish groups, but I don't know within the African continent if this is happening more en masse. I feel like they are more secluded, I would say, and it's because of Nigeria. Nigeria, there are some things I cannot speak about because I don't want to get in trouble with politics, Nigerian politics. But it is very difficult for Jewish or Hebrew things to come from the outside into Nigeria. It's a challenge.
Okay.
I will leave it at that.
All right. So I got a question from the videos too that was very interesting. That when you were talking to what is his name, first of all, the elder?
His name is Ephraim Agado Uba.
Uba, IBU?
UBA, Uba.
Uba. I wish we can get him on. Does he speak English?
He does speak English, but he's very he's a very elderly, and he usually has one of his sons to help him and assist him.
Right. Okay. I would love to have him on it, but I heard him say. I heard you ask a couple of things. The first question is their migration pattern, because they're saying they left Israel, right? Do you know, not, I mean, detail for detail, but do you know the pattern that they came from, that they say the oral traditions they came from Israel? Was it directly straight into like, or where did they stop off to and to get to West Africa?
No, they don't. I haven't heard any account that of a very specific way that they arrived. What they have in their tradition is that Eri, son of God, was the one that settled into Igbo land.
Mm-hmm.
And but if we utilize the genetic studies and all the other historical studies and study how peoples are migrating throughout the African continent, then it is safe to say that they came in by way of East Africa and then went across North Africa and then downward into the Niger River basin. That makes the most sense to do it that way.
So they consider the tribe of Gad, most of the Igbos that you spoke to?
Yes, that is the predominant
one.
That's the oldest one. There's another detail now that I remember. Igbos use a red cap. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes, I've seen it. Yes.
That red cap, according to some Igbos, means they connect that with Moroccans. So that connects them with North Africa.
Fez cap, yeah. Fez cap, right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And also, I wanted to touch bases off with you. You know, you mentioned you're a Sephardic Jew and your ancestors from Portugal and Spain. So I want to ask you, your ancestors, the Jews, because I've read a lot of books where they were deposited into Africa from Portugal and Spain.
That's correct.
During the time. So what part of Africa was they deposited in, and were they Jews converts, or they were practicing from day one?
Okay, so I cannot say beyond maybe the 1200s. So my first surname Elazar, that's my paternal lineage. So my mother's father's lineage, Elazar, that goes back to the 12th century in Spain. And the patriarch, his name was Al-Azhar, and he was what's called Al-Fakin. Al-Fakin in Arabic was an interpreter and financier. So he would interpret he was a court Jew, what they would say, someone who interpreted and run the finances for the king. The king at that time was Berenguer the First from the kingdom of Aragon in northern Spain. So that's the furthest history that I have of that particular family. Now, according to our oral tradition, those Jews that were in Spain at that time, they spoke Arabic, they spoke Hebrew, and those were the languages that they would speak. And those Jews came into Al-Andalus or Andalusia together with Muslims in the year 711. That's one of the traditions. The other tradition says that they had been there from the time of the destruction of the Second Temple, and they were taken as slaves by the Roman Empire into what today is known as Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula.
Yeah.
Another tradition says that from the time of King Solomon, that there were Israelites already established in the Iberian Peninsula. So these are three different migrations. Now, according to the second tradition, the house of King David, so the house of Yehuda, they were taken as slaves to the Iberian Peninsula.
Right.
Now, according to the migration of those that came in 711, there were Jews and Muslims coming in and out, going back and forth, all the way from Saudi Arabia and Yemen, across North Africa, and into Spain and Portugal, and traveling backwards. So Jews and Muslims were working together as merchants and traders, coming in and out of the Iberian Peninsula. And so there are some history, for example, Ivan Septima writes about the more. He writes
Got
about
his books.
Yeah, good. We got his books. Yeah.
and in his books he talks about some of the migrations of those Jews that
Yeah.
left from East Africa and also coming out of Arabia
Yeah.
into Andalusia and Portugal. So
That's good.
according to my genetic studies, my own family studies, and what I've been able to see, that correlates to that history of those Jews coming from the Arabian Peninsula and into North Africa and Andalusia. And then after the expulsion, then my part of the family went into Portugal, and from Portugal they went to France, and from France to Holland, from Holland then they went to Curacao in the Caribbean, and Curacao into Dominican Republic. So that's one branch. Another branch left from Spain and went to Morocco, and from Morocco then they went to the Caribbean. And so other branches from Spain, they went into Italy, and from Italy then they went to into Africa as well, and then from Africa to the Caribbean. So we're touching Africa all the time, either many centuries before or after the expulsion.
All right, my last question for a little while. We still got time. I remember the elder Ephraim speaking about a book in 1921. I remember you said you didn't remember.
Yes.
It was a book about Thomas Basden. We have the book, and he said something that was interesting, very interesting. He said that prior to 1920, that the Igbos weren't practicing Christianity in Igbo land and that they got converted. Right. I found that very interesting that they were on their customs. So it makes me feel like the Igbos who say they are not, Israelites or Jews are the ones that were converted from Christianity, because he said there's no oral tradition prior to that. So I just wanted to know, did you get any more information on that when he spoke about that?
Not really, but I would say one thing. I would say that the British Empire needed Nigeria, and the way they needed the state, the concept of Nigeria, in order to be able to take, I would say a stronger word, confiscate the resources that are in Igbo land. If you go to Nigeria, most of Nigeria is a desert.
Yeah.
It's a desert. But when you go to Igbo land, it's green, it's lush, it's fertile. So I saw things there that I cannot speak about here because I will get in trouble.
Wow.
So Nigeria as a concept is necessary as a political tool for the British Empire, and the vehicle to do that was Christianity. I will leave it there.
Yeah, okay. I definitely understand that. So while we're waiting, Yashia, you got any questions? Ben Aliyah, you want to ask a question, man? Welcome, brother.
Yeah, Shalom. You really just asked the question what I was thinking, because I know people that's Nigerian from the Igbo tribe, and they have no type of, like, they so far away from the tradition of the Hebrew.
Your wife, wait a minute. Let your wife, right, is from Africa, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, she's Nigerian. But she was born over here. She's been Americanized.
Oh, okay.
But,
okay.
She's from the Igbo tribe. You know what I'm saying? And so, when I go over the customs and we read scripture, it's like she's not familiar with that. And I'm like, saying the research is saying that a lot of people from your tribe is Hebrew Israelites. So how you don't, maybe I need to have this conversation with her mother. I don't know, but you just pretty much asked what I was wondering. You said that basically by them being colonized into Christianity, that's just what they do believe in the Father. They believe in the Son, but they got the Hellenistic customs. They use the word God, the word Jesus, things like that. So.
I found when I was there in Nigeria, I found that those Igbos who are so Christianity starts to come into Nigeria or Igbo land in the late 19th century. So we're talking about 100 years, maybe a little less, of acculturation or colonization. And so this takes us to maybe 3 or 4 generations. When you talk to the older Igbo, the elders, I interviewed all ages, but mainly the older people. The elders, they have the tradition intact. And some of them even told me, because I spoke to Igbos of different generations, age groups, those who are, I would say, in their between from 40 years old to maybe 70 years old, they have all passed through Christianity. They grew up as Christians, and then they, when they got older, they became conscious about their tradition, and they let go of Christianity. So those Igbos outside of Igbo land who are in that age group, when I interviewed them in Lagos or Abuja or any of these places, they had memory of other Igbos who never were influenced by Christianity. So that's very interesting. That they will say, and this is interesting in Jewish law, because in Jewish law we have a concept or a principle that says the mouth that prohibits is the mouth that permits, which in psychology means if someone incriminates himself, we can believe that he's telling the truth because he has something to lose. Now, most people will say, "Oh, no, I'm 100% Israelite. I'm Jewish. I never been infected by another religion." If somebody says that, then you can accept it, but with skepticism. But when somebody says with humility, and they say, "Oh no, my parents, they were Christians and so on and so forth. I grew up as a Christian, but I let go of that," we can presume that they're telling the truth. So when I hear those stories among the Igbos who grew up as Christians and let go of it when they grew up, then that tells me I can believe what they're telling me about those Igbos who did not touch Christianity. So I would say that majority of Igbos today, the majority, and that's what actually, going back to the original question, the ruling that Obadiah Alliance made was how to receive those Igbos who have become Christians back into the fold. And that's very interesting because in Jewish law, this is a topic that is a hot topic among Jews and rabbis in many centuries, because Jews are subject to exiles and forced conversions to Islam and to Christianity specifically. And so rabbis have to know how to deal with those Jews who have been estranged to the Jewish customs or the tradition. But because being a Jew or a Hebrew is not a matter of religion, it's a matter of blood, DNA, genetic memory, I would say, to use that language. It's a matter of genetic memory that is in the DNA. Then they write these different legal responses on how we should be able to treat those Israelites who've been estranged from the Jewish community. Those very same principles can be utilized to apply to the Igbos as well, based on their legal presumption of who they say they are. So those who have become Christians or even Muslims, there are some Igbos who are Muslims as well in Nigeria.
Right.
In Abuja, there are some. Even those who are Muslims, they are still Igbos. They are still Israelites, according to the law. So there's a way to return them to their root if they choose to do so. And that's what the ruling is about.
So you're saying every Igbo is Israelite?
I would say so. based upon the frequency. Based upon the frequency. Yeah.
Because they know
And I would
they
say the
know
following. I would say the following. This is very important. Igbos preserve their genealogy because of their burial rights and their land, their connection to the land. If you are an Igbo and you leave Nigeria and you go to the UK or USA or Caribbean or anywhere in the world and you die, the local Igbo community will take your body and bury you in your family ancestral clan in that land. Why do they do this? Because in this way, your genealogy will not be lost. It will be intact. And when Igbos pray, they pray mentioning their ancestors. And they can pray, they know at least 10 generations going back. So that's more than many Jews only know 3 or 4 generations.
Yeah.
In their family. But Igbos can tell you 10 generations going back or even further because they are mentioning the ancestors. Just
I was going to say that.
Mention Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and David, and Solomon, and so on and so forth.
So that confirms what you just said. That confirms a lot of what I've been thinking about. And it's funny that this came up because I noticed I talk to a lot of Jews. I have a lot of European Jews or Ashkenazi Jews or whatever the case may be. I talked, and a lot of them can't go too further back than the 3 or 4, maybe 4 generations.
Maybe 4.
And I noticed in our history of dealing in Africa, they go back thousands of years in their generation, and they hold that oral tradition. So I wanted to ask, because Rabbi, because I took my DNA, right, and my DNA came back 90% sub-Saharan Africa, right, with 40% of my blood was Igbo.
Okay.
And it was I took 2 tests. I took CRI genetics and I took 23andMe.
Okay.
And both of them came back just about identical. Okay. And but I wanted to ask if me being that my frequency, my DNA percentage was really high because I didn't have that much European blood in me. I think it was like maybe under 2%. And could I have a valid argument that I would be majority Igbo, being though that was the highest percentage of my DNA?
I will explain how autosomal DNA works. So among geneticists, autosomal DNA is not the best genetic study to study an individual. It's good to study within a population. So once again, frequency. One of the drawbacks to autosomal DNA, which all these companies are selling with the percentages, is that you might match, because of genetic mutations, you might match with people who are not really related to you. So you're matching with a mutation of someone else.
Oh, wow.
So that's one of the drawbacks. However, if I will explain the mathematics of how it works, the autosomal DNA can connect you to 5 generations. So if we take the mathematic formula, you take base 2, the number 2 to the 5th power, that gives you 32. What that means is we all have 32 ancestors in 5 generations. We have 2 parents. Those 2 parents have 2 parents, and so on and so forth. To the 5th generation, we have 32 ancestors. If you do the mathematics, you say, you will say about 4% represents 1 ancestor. If you multiply 32 times 4, it will give you more or less 100. So every 4% could be 1 ancestor. So if you have 40%, we could say that you have between 9 and 10 ancestors that were Igbo from the 32. You got that?
Got that. I got it.
So from 32 ancestors in 5 generations, 9 to 10 of them were Igbo.
Wow. That's
so that's about 1/3. Yeah. If you look at it, 9 to 10.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, see how you got something. Please, everyone, hit the like button, and YouTube, Facebook, you guys watching, please hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything to hit the like button and share the video, please. Yashia, go ahead.
I got a few questions that was texted to me I want to ask. I'm looking at the comments in the chat. Everybody love it, so I don't know why they ain't hitting the like button.
Yeah.
This is engaging right here. This is wonderful.
Yeah, it is. Very informative. Very.
So I wanted to say something before I ask the question, because this prefaced off of the prior question I asked you. Well, in dealing with some of the Igbo people over in Nigeria, and I don't want to say nobody's name because now I'm seeing that people can get in trouble. But they are so warm and inviting to us over here in America. And so that's why I was wondering what's going on over there in the land. Like, we only getting, and so it's beautiful how they treat us. It's like they love us, even over here in America. And I started a new job about 3 years ago, and I seen this young lady. She was in there. And, I've been reading a lot of books about Igbo. And so I asked her, she said, I'm from Nigeria. And I said, you Igbo? She said, yeah. She said, nobody else. We just hugged each other. And so it's just a good feeling. And I'm getting the same feeling with you. Like, it's like warm and inviting. And I feel like, welcome with you. So I just wanted to get that out. Let me ask you the questions that these people text me. And so one person asked this question. They wanted to know your position on the New Testament, if you believe the New Testament, or and so I mean that's one question.
Okay, so I'm a traditional Sephardic Jew, and for me the New Testament doesn't have any importance in terms of how I live my life as a Jew. For me, the New Testament as a scholar can indicate perhaps how Jews may have lived in the first century, or can attest to some oral traditions and teachings that we find within the Talmud as well.
Okay, great.
I got a question. You believe in the Messiah, right?
If I believe in the Messiah, I actually believe in various Messiahs. If we talk about personal belief, I believe in various.
Yeah, he just answered the question. He doesn't subscribe to the New Testament. That's that. Yashia, go ahead.
All right, and so would you ask Bear Walk when we got questions? Just raise the hands up so we can make sure that he's done answering, and if the other person is through.
Right. We don't want to bombard him with that.
Yeah, we want to.
Right.
He already answered that one. So this was asked as well. This is a good question too. When you were over in Igbo land, over in Nigeria, dealing with the Igbos, what spiritual deficiencies, if any, did you see amongst those of us who have not known or been in observance or in contact with our heritage, our spiritual and our national heritage?
Okay, so you're referring to comparing those who are in the States to those who are in Igbo land? Is that your question?
Everybody, well, basically, I think how she's asking this question is people that were not in a set worship system amongst our people. Did you notice any deficiencies that they was lacking in, like spiritually? And since they became aware, or I guess that would be more for us over here, like, because we were the ones more precluded from the knowledge that we was Israelites until we started reading a lot of books.
Right. So I would say there are thousands of synagogues in Igbo land. I only just touched the surface, and I have heard of so many different groups throughout Igbo land. Igbo land has 5 states. I only went to one state,
right,
which is Imo State. So in all the other, there were some places I could not go to due to safety concerns.
Right.
It's dangerous. There's an army over there called Boko Haram. I don't know if you know about them.
We know about them.
You have to be very careful especially if they know that you are a Jew or connected to Jews and trying to empower Igbos, like it's very dangerous. So I didn't feel like I wanted to be kidnapped by anyone trying to go in a certain place. So I didn't go to some of those places. And I hope that I can go next time to explore some of those places. And so what I can say is that from what I've heard of the different groups, those thousands of groups that exist throughout Igbo land, is there's no uniform practice because of the invasion and colonization of the British Empire through Christianity. And so those Igbos who have let go of Christianity, there are different groups. There are some groups that are called Sabbatarians. And the Sabbatarians, they have some Christian theology that they just subscribe to, but they practice their indigenous traditions as Igbos. Then you have other groups. You have various different levels of consciousness, I would say, and observance. And so, to answer that question, I would say that because of the colonization, the Igbos have been disenfranchised and broken up into pieces, and there needs to be some type of work or movement that will create a cohesiveness among Igbos. And I believe this is what Omanana Defenders is all about, if you know about them. I'm sure you probably heard about them by Remy Ilona.
Yes.
Omanana Defenders, they are fighting against this colonization by bringing awareness of Omanana culture to the Igbos.
To the Igbos there that don't know.
Empower them. So,
This is great. And so based off of that answer that you just gave, we can now give some meaning to what's going on over here in America, because this may be the greatest colonization over here in America. I'm not sure, but it could be with how Christianity moved in and caught us at a vulnerable time, and they did what they did. And so, but we also got to take a lot of the blame as well as the Israelites that is trying to make people aware, because it's not smooth and cohesive. It's like it's being forced on people that have been indoctrinated for over 400 years.
Right.
And so it's hard, but I think if we do it patiently and intelligently, I think we can make it happen where a lot of people start realizing, hey, wait a minute, they own something here. We are the people of the book. And I got one more question for you. You want to speak, Rabbi? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I will say something about that. In Igbo land, specifically in Owerri, where I was, that community is ready and available to receive any African American that feels that they are from the Igbo and have been estranged. They are ready with open arms to receive you with a special ceremony as one of their own.
Wow.
Yes.
I kind of alluded to how they treat us because we fellowship with them from time to time on Shabbat.
Okay.
We go live and fellowship with them, and it's just all love. It's like, honestly, I hate to say it's better than anything over here in America. It is. It's sincerity, and you can feel love, and so that cures a lot of ills right there.
Yes.
We got the young lady that asked the other. She's got one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make sure I'm getting this right. Well, actually, she got two if we get time. What are the greatest deceptions that you saw amongst us over here to the ways of the Igbos?
I don't understand the question. What does it mean exactly?
All right. It's okay. So, are there perhaps 3 to 5 practices that you see the Igbos keep that we should be implementing over here in America to restore our genetic or DNA memory?
Oh, very good. Very, very, very good question. I like that question. So Number one, this is something that the Igbos told me over there. Anyone who's claiming to be Igbo and wants to reconnect with their root, if you are a male, you need to be circumcised. Period. That's number one. Number two, take on an Igbo name. Take on an Igbo name. All Igbo names have God's name in it. So I like that you have the T-shirt with God's name on it. In Igbo language, this name is Chiuku, which means the Almighty, the Most High, the Creator. And so all Igbos have in their Igbo name have this name in it, just like in Hebrew.
Right.
Like my name, Yehonatan. Yehonatan, right? It's two words, God's name and Natan. God has given, the Lord has given, or the Almighty has given. So I have my Igbo name as well. You know, I've been given a name when I was there. So all Igbos have an Igbo name, and that name has the holy name within it. So that's two things. And then the third thing would be, so I'm basing this on a midrash. There's a midrash, which is like a rabbinic lore, that says that when Jacob came back from the house of Laban and he came back to Canaan, the Torah says he came back shalem. Shalem meaning he came back whole. He was perfect. Now the rabbis, what they do with this lore is they take the letter of each one. So Shin, Lamed, Mem, the SH, the L, and the M from Shalem, and the Shin represents Shem, names. So they say, these rabbis say that the Israelites didn't lose their identity, or the Hebrews, in Egypt because they kept their names, Shem. So name is important. Lashon, language. So start learning Igbo language and Hebrew. And Mem, Milah, circumcision. 3 things. So I gave you 3. The next 2 are going to be related to a ritual. So, and also food. If you eat the foods that your ancestors ate, you will trigger your genetic memory. That's a big deal. So find out what Igbos eat and start eating that way. And then the next one will be the colonization ceremony. So if you don't know what that is, find it out and find your local Igbo and partake of it. These are 5 things you can do to trigger your genetic memory.
That's interesting. So with us taking these DNA tests, I know a lot of people, some people don't believe in it. And like I told you, like I mentioned, the high percentage of Igbo that I have in my blood. Well, if I was to go over there and like, you know, I identify as a Hebrew Israelite, right? And so if, you know, a lot of Hebrew Israelites over here in America, just this yell tribe of Judah, we don't subscribe to that. We don't know what tribe we can be from, right? So we don't sit there and say, oh, we tribe of Judah, or we the tribe of this. Another thing too, Rabbi, to let you know, we don't teach hate. We accept Gentiles or Europeans or any skin race in our community.
Okay.
We're not teaching hate like that as only our skin color can be saved. None of that nonsense.
Okay.
So we don't subscribe to none of that in our ministry. We take all kinds of people as long as they're trying to walk righteous and try to strive to keep the commandments, statutes, and laws, right? So with that being,
I want to comment on what you just said. I think that's praiseworthy, because, and I will say it like it is, I think it's very ridiculous and it's very ridiculous to judge people based on skin color. And I understand that those peoples who are of our skin complexion in the States who are teaching in such a way, they're doing so as a way of getting back at those who did what they did to their ancestors. But you know, there's no real reason to do that, because if we look at the entire slave trade, you know, my PhD was on slavery and slave trade.
Yeah.
I can tell you that this transatlantic slave trade was not about white people selling black people. if you want to put it that in simple terms. It was actually a lot of different people selling each other, and then one group of people sending, well, various groups of people sending slaves into the Americas, and those slaves were not only black, there were slaves of different colors as well. So it just so happens that the way that the United States of America was developed politically, black people or people of color, I don't like to use the term black and white, because that's like separating people because of a skin complexion. I would say people with a high amount of melanin or enriched melanin people have been disenfranchised because of theological interpretations on particularly what's called the curse of Ham. And this became part of law and part of society and politics in the United States, such that people with a high melanin count were disenfranchised. So one of the things that we need to do is to dismantle and eradicate this belief. And the way we're going to do that is by changing our language. Yeah.
So Rabbi, if being though, because I wanted to get back to the DNA, if I wanted to go over to Africa and visit the Igbo people, right? Would Gad be the only tribe that they would mention that for us the 12 tribes, or do they subscribe to any other tribes outside of Gad? Because I'm looking at my DNA, like I said, and it's being though I got a high percentage of Igbo blood in me. What I would go over and try to match my DNA with them, that's what I want to do, to try to see if that what tribe I could possibly be from. And two, also I heard downloading the raw genetics of my DNA, which would give me my migration patterns as well, and compare them to their oral tradition. So what would you say about that?
That hasn't been done yet. As far as I know, in order to do what you're talking about, that's something I would love to be able to do that. But first, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And second, Igbos from various clans have to be willing to take the DNA test. And a lot of people don't want to do it because it's a taboo among Igbos. So if enough Igbos, if a significant amount of Igbos do these DNA tests, and then we can create some type of database, then we will be able to do comparative genetic analysis.
Right.
And then we can do exactly what we're talking about. But I don't think at this stage, we can do that.
I asked that question too, to add on, because I'm hoping I got Tudor Parford coming on.
Okay.
If you're familiar with him, I just spoke with him on an email, and I'm praying that when he gets back, because he just went back over to visit the Limba and live with them. Right. And I seen when he was doing the DNA over there, they were taking the DNA, but they were comparing it to the Kohan Levitical priest.
Right.
So he said he found some more new information on the Limba that he's going to reveal after his study of going over it. So that's why I was asking, could this be done?
This type of test can be done, and I would say that it should be done among the two specific lineages, the Aro and the Enri clan, because they have the Levitical and the priestly functions among the Igbos. So, but no study has been done yet like that.
What about the Limba? Do you agree with the Limba being descendants as well as the Hebrew Israelites? Because they say they are.
I say they have a very strong claim, not only because, once again, their customs, the oral traditions, the DNA, and the history of the migration from out of Yemen, Jews from Yemen that went southward into Tanzania and then Zimbabwe, South Africa. To me, it's obvious.
I got one more question for you, I believe, sir. And first, I wanted to thank you for all of your efforts and everything that you do to enlighten the people and help the people. I'm very proud of your accomplishments, your PhD, your master's, how you conduct yourself. Very impressed as well. And so, because we spent a lot of time talking about the Igbos, which we know it's a large percentage of us in America that have Igbo blood in us, DNA. We didn't talk about the Sephardic DNA.
Wow.
Because we got, look what's going on over in Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico.
Yes.
So
Sephardic DNA. So this is a very hot topic. It has been for the last 10 years or so.
Okay.
And as genetic studies have been increasing and becoming more and more fine-tuned, what we see, there have been some studies that have said that at least up to 35% of people in Latin America have Sephardic DNA. And this is based on genetic studies that have been performed. Yes. And I can tell you about the study that I did with my master's in a city in Bani in the Dominican Republic. And I used mitochondrial DNA, which is the DNA that's specifically mothers giving to their children, both male and female. The reason why I did mitochondrial DNA specifically was because I wanted to do two things. I wanted to show a frequency of endogamous relationships that, in other words, they're not, this group of people are not marrying just anyone. They're marrying within themselves, among themselves. That's number one. And number two, I wanted to see if in the results there are any connections between Sephardic matriarchs in other countries with those matriarchs in the Dominican Republic city. And I'll tell you the result, very simple. Close to 70% of the population in the city of Bani in Dominican Republic, which is known to be a city that was founded by Sephardic Jews, descend from 6 women. They descend from 6 women. Now, within those 6 women or 6 genetic matriarchs, there are 3 of them which are directly connected to Sephardic diasporic matriarchs in Greece, Turkey, Morocco, Portugal, in Israel, and North Africa. So the genetic results correlated and gave strength to everything else that I did in the research, which were the customs, the anthropological study, the ethnography that I did, and also they have genealogies that go back to the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, Canary Islands, North Africa. So this study, what I did was a mock study, which can be repeated in other parts in Latin America.
Man, this is huge. So the diaspora, we was dispersed everywhere. So somebody over in U.S. may have the same Sephardic DNA as you have, or they may have the Igbo DNA.
Yes. Let me tell you something about it. Some people I have as in my rabbinic work, because I work as a rabbi on 2 different Jewish courts. On one of the courts, when people come to me asking me about their descent and if they're Jews and how they can prove it, or they bring certain evidences, and we investigate their lineages, their genealogy, their customs, their DNA in some cases, what we have found is that some people who are known Jews here in the Dominican Republic are genetically related to some of those candidates or people who are searching in Puerto Rico or in the States. So there are genetic cousins with known Jews in our database. And to me, that's amazing.
That is. I got a question on the board for you, Rabbi. My question is, this is from Brother K. Judah. He said, my question is, why is it so much confusion on where Israel is today? Some say South Africa and Jerusalem, Ethiopia.
Oh,
so I don't know if you heard that. Brother Ron
yes.
Dalton. Brother Ron Dalton has done a study. I know if you heard of Ron Dalton, he's done a study saying that Israel and the land, that whole land is not Israel, it's actually South Africa. Now, we believe that maybe it might be a little bit bigger than what they say it is, but we know for sure that that's the homeland right there. So what's your take on that?
So I would say this. I would say that Israelites are, because of the diaspora, the exile, wherever Israelites are going to, they take a piece of Israel, of the Holy Land, with them to this particular place. So you will find, for example, New Jerusalem or a city of Jerusalem in many parts of the world, because where Jews are going, they want to feel that they are now leaving home, or they're taking home with them. So you'll find, say, the city of Salem or Jerusalem or New Jerusalem in many parts of the world, or Zion, as an idea, as opposed to a physical space. We go to the Torah. The Torah begins in chapter 2 of Genesis, delineating borders with 4 rivers. And those 4 rivers, if we examine them, speak of a land that's partially African, Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, all the way to Iraq, and includes all of Kuwait, so part of the Persian Gulf. So we're talking about a huge piece of land, which the Torah establishes as Eretz HaKodesh, the land of separation, or the land of prophecy. So when Israelites are leaving, or Hebrews are leaving this land and going into other parts, other regions in the world, they want to take this idea with them. So when they get to those places, they might call that place Israel, because that's a way of keeping your genetic memory alive. The same thing happens among Igbos. Some Igbos consider Biafra to be the Holy Land. They consider that, and we have to accept that as a valid interpretation, because of the experience of exile, which takes home with you. You take the holiness of the land with you. And as I explained earlier in the early part of the interview, one of the compelling evidences of the Igbos is their concept of what you do in the land. So they took all those practices from the Middle East, from the Holy Land, with them into the African continent, and it is no matter why, or there's no contradiction as to why a particular group would then consider their land, where they are now, to be Israel, or the Holy Land.
Wow, very good, very good. We got about 9 minutes left, y'all. Does anybody else in the chat? Oh, Yashia, you got anything? Abraham, you got a question? One question you want to ask?
Yeah. So I might not been listening good enough, but I just want to know, where does the rabbi do you believe the original Israel is today?
Okay, so
the land.
So what I was just explaining now about the 4 rivers in the book of Genesis, it mentions one river that goes to the land of Cush, one river that goes to what is partially or the Fertile Crescent, Syria and Iraq, another one that goes from Iraq and Kurdistan and then down into the Kuwait, the Persian Gulf, and another that cuts through the northern part of what we know today as Saudi Arabia. That huge chunk of land, that is the land of Israel. These are the borders. And the Torah begins this way because the Torah is establishing the borders and then the genealogies of those peoples who are going to live there, namely the descendants of Shem.
All right. Yashia, you got anything else?
I'm racking my brain. He's covered like everything and more.
Yeah.
Like, and it was real simple for him. So I don't know. Wow.
Yeah. You know, we always it's funny, I'm just gonna bring it up, Rabbi, because we got all positive information in the chat, but there's always gonna be somebody that's not that well studied, that has something that they try to push back on. And I believe this is maybe the young brother wasn't watching the whole video, because he's speaking in reference to some Igbos saying that they're not Israelites and that they come from white people. And he's trying to refer me to watch a YouTube, but I think he didn't watch the video from the beginning, who you are, and that you've been over there studying the Igbo tribe, and that he probably might be unaware that we were talking about the Thomas Basden book, where the conversion came in at, was there are some Igbos today that do not know they Israelites. And so this is what we're trying to teach some of these people in the audience that are pushing back to the Igbo or this or that. But you have to read books and study instead of watching a YouTube video and regurgitating something that you heard. Well, I'm trying to help him out by explaining to him, we call them deceivers, right? Or whatever you may call a converts. So, I mean, I just wanted to bring that up because of that, Rabbi.
Thank you. I would say, in response to that, there are two customs that no matter among the Igbos, no matter even if they are Christians or Muslims, there are two customs that they preserve to this day, even if they have been so disconnected from the Igbo Omenana tradition. And that is circumcising their boys on the 8th day and marrying other Igbos.
And that's Torah, no matter how you look.
So this is very significant because they're preserving the covenant by way of circumcision, and then marriage, preserving that identity for their children. And so this is what it is. Even if those Igbos who are Christians or Muslims and they've been disconnected from the Omanana tradition, they still practice these two rituals which connect them to their genetic or national memory as Israelites.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Alvaron.
I got one more quick question. I see how you was telling me like the ways to take back your DNA genetic as far as the circumcision and the marrying within your nation. What do they include, or would this include too, like the Shabbat? Does the Shabbat matter, or is that doesn't helps out, or is that's I just want to know, is that a custom too, or why isn't that one?
Okay, so the Shabbat is very important because the Shabbat does two things. And in the Jewish tradition, on Friday nights, we say the Kiddush over a cup of wine, and we are making two declarations when we do the Shabbat. The first declaration is that the Almighty, the oneness, the universe, created the heavens and the earth, and that's the God that we worship. That's the first declaration. And the second declaration is very, very important, which is that same oneness, as an active agent in human affairs, took our ancestors from slavery and made us free. So now we are celebrating on Shabbat. We celebrate our freedom by the hand of the Creator who made heavens and earth. So Shabbat is a very significant and very important ritual to practice, for sure.
It's a ritual. Okay. So,
Basically,
yeah.
Custom ritual.
Yeah, I mean the prophet Ezekiel says that keeping the Shabbat is a seal of the covenant. Mm-hmm. It's a sign. So in Hebrew we use the word ot. So there's a ot, which is referring to like a sign. So if you want to know who is like an Israelite, you look for these markers. specific markers, otot, plural.
And when you say celebrate, do you mean just praise?
Well, to celebrate means, I would say, to acknowledge. You know, if you're keeping Shabbat, there are things that we don't do and other things that we do in order to acknowledge the Creator on that particular day as our Creator and as our Savior, our Redeemer.
All praises.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I want to say this too to the audience too, because sometimes we can get a little ahead of ourselves by not listening and not observing to someone that can be knowledgeable and skillful in what they've been studying. And it's an honor for me to have Rabbi DaMota on here and share that information. And I understand. I don't think some of you in the chat really clearly understand what he was saying. And I think you might need to go back and listen to the whole video because, like Yashia said, he covered some of those things about those particular Igbos. But I want to say this: no matter how you guys' opinion you feel about Rabbi or what he was saying, one thing I know is probably 99% of the people in here, probably 100%, have never been to Africa to even study anyone and watch their customs. But this is one thing. If you read a lot of books like Nazarene Hebrew Institute of Technology, we read a lot of books. We vet it. We have library books over here in my house and Brother Yashia's house, Brother DeWatt house, and books. If you have to understand custom, culture, identity, language, and what he did is he went out just like all renowned scholars and studied these customs to see if they had a legitimate argument that they might be descendants of Hebrew Israelites. 100% proof? No, we can't prove that. That's just like us over here in America yelling we Hebrew Israelites. They have actually more history and artifacts over there than we can even imagine over here to claim that we are Hebrew Israelites. So we need to be careful how we just say stuff and you're not that well studied in what you're saying. So I'm not trying to offend anyone, but it just bothers me when people get in the chat and they don't have nothing to stand on except a YouTube video. And you have to really, really look at who we talking to here. I suggest you guys go do some homework. And because this gentleman here is in the same category with Tudor Parford, and I don't believe y'all even know who he is. And he's a European, saying that some of these people have a legitimate argument that they're Israelites. So please be careful, guys, when you say stuff and you're trying to act knowledgeable from being a regurgitator from YouTube. This man has done his work and research, and the Obadiah's letter that you guys are saying, I don't know, you need to look at the history of Jewish courts and what's going on in Israel for them to even consider this. So again, it's not about trying to be right or wrong and not trying to offend anyone, but it just bothers me when people don't do their due diligence and study and learn how to research stuff. So again, Rabbi, I really, really appreciate you. I'm asking for one big giant favor that you please send me the email of those Igbo scholars, their names, because we want. Oh, and one thing I forgot, you have a book I was told coming out. Now, so can you share the name of your
information?
Yeah, you have a book coming out.
So I've been. There's a book that's coming out on Jewish law comparing to international law, and another book that I've been working on called Black Jews and Their Slaves.
Oh wow! Okay, Black Jews and those
Black
slaves.
Jews and their slaves. Yeah, that's
you know when it's
the title is controversial.
Yeah, I see that. You know when it's due to come out?
Sometime next year.
Okay. Anything else, Yashia?
I just want to say to some of these kids in the audience, they may not know what we have on the stage in front of us.
They don't.
Dr. Elazar DaMota is at the top of the food chain amongst our people. and he's put in work. I mean, not just in Nigeria or amongst the Igbos. He's traveled, he's studied, he's credentialed. He has all of the essentials for us to call him a scholar. And so we should sit down and listen to what he has to say rather than pushing narratives or coming here with some feigned attempt to combat him. I'm listening, and you know, y'all know the word on me, and I'm not on his level. I'm sitting here listening. I'm in awe. So we should appreciate him for his efforts and applaud him. And like I said, take notes instead of coming in and talking about YouTube videos, because no, this is different right here. This is different right here. And I got one more thing, Bear Wack. We have to try to get him back at another date. I don't know. We know he's got a busy schedule, but we need to get him back at some point next year.
We definitely reach. Excuse me. We'll definitely reach back out to him. Definitely will. And again, we thank everyone for listening. We thank for the audience. And Rabbi, we definitely look forward to trying to get you back next year sometime. I know you have a busy schedule. And also, again, I appreciate that. Everything that you've done, very informative. And I thank you so much, sir.
Blessings to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. All right, y'all. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Boy, what?
I'm a living sacrifice. I chose to be a service to the people that be hurting. Lord knows I don't deserve this life. I've been searching and I found that I'm just here to serve a purpose. Listen, I'm a living sacrifice. Y'all don't understand, it was all in this plan. I'm just here to help you get it right. No, I'm not your average Israelite, cause I am the light. Who I am in this flesh ain't important at all. I'm just here to save as many as I can till I'm gone. Everybody got a lane, I just stay in my own. I never worry about the next and what they got going on. God gave me a mission, so I move a little different. Everything I say and do, it ain't me, it's the spirit. Yeah, that be God that you hearing. He uses me as a vessel. When he wanna take control, I don't fight, I just let him. I sacrifice my carnal life so I can do this work. I'm trying to save a few souls before I leave this earth. I hope and pray that when you hear this, you digest these lyrics. Just know we out here in these trenches, no square business. I'm a living sacrifice. I chose to be a service to the people that be hurting. Lord knows I don't deserve this life. I've been searching and I found that I'm just here to serve a purpose. Listen, I'm a living sacrifice. Y'all don't understand, it was all in this plan. I'm just here to help you get it right. No, I'm not your average Israelite, cause I am the light. Most of these Israelites do it for the image. They talk bad about them Christians, but they ain't no different. Modern day Pharisees is what they are. All they talk about is law, but don't be showing love at all. I find it kind of funny how they claim to follow Christ. You a wolf in sheep's clothing, I can see it in your eyes, boy. Quit with all them lies, boy. Narrow is the way, you can't play on both sides, boy. Living double lies, boy. I sacrifice my carnal life so I can do this work. I'm trying to save a few souls before I leave this earth. I hope and pray that when you hear this, you digest these lyrics. Just know we out here in these trenches, no square business. I'm a living sacrifice. I chose to be a service to the people that be hurting. Lord knows I don't deserve this life. I've been searching and I found that I'm just here to serve a purpose. Listen, I'm a living sacrifice. Y'all don't understand, it was all in this plan. I'm just here to help you get it right. No, I'm not your average Israelite, cause I am the light.